Okay, so we're talking about marketing. Okay. And what are we looking at? This is fairly straightforward. What are we looking at? Yeah, exactly. Bottled water. So you'd see this on a lot of different stores, wouldn't you? In a grocery store, in a supermarket, right? Um, we see it here, okay, a lot. So I want to talk about bottled water today a little bit. Particularly, I think I said this to you the last day. You know, we didn't have a market for bottled water, certainly a very, very tiny market for bottled water 40 years ago. And now it's worth nearly €1 billion. Okay. And there's nothing wrong with the water we can drink at the tap in this country. By and large, in pretty much 95% of the country, you can drink the water out of a tap. So why do we spend money on bottled water? That's something we want to understand, because it's a real marketing success story for the water companies. Not so good for the environment, but why is that? So that's what we'll come back to that as we go through a couple of things today. We talked about sort of a process that we would follow with marketing just about 2 classes ago. This idea that we should have a mission, we should do some sort of situation analysis, develop a marketing strategy, create a marketing mix, and then implement and control our marketing thing, whatever it's going to be, whatever our mix is going to be. And we sort of broke that down a bit more in terms of this marketing planning process, which is a 15-step process. And it kind of brings in stuff we've talked about elsewhere, as well as some key market tools. We're going to talk a bit more about some of this stuff now, but what I kind of want to flag to you is really a few elements. So I'm going to try and flag, which, I've kind of mentioned this already, and possibly beat it to death. Let me just make this a little bit more obvious. Define your target audience. I think that's really crucial. So define your target audience. Who is our customer? I kind of stress this all along. Who's our customer? What is it that they want? What is it that they need? We really need to understand them. That's going to be central to what we're talking about, because that really helps us in terms of segmentation. So you don't see segmentation on this list, but actually it's a key part of this marketing strategy, is defining the target audience. The target audience is not the market. The target audience is those that we want to address within a segment that we think works for us, within a market that we've identified. So we need to be quite specific about this. Okay, we don't market the same way to everybody. Okay, we don't promote the same way to everybody. So our learning objectives are, so we don't market to everybody the same way. So our learning objectives, know the importance of marketing and organization. We've talked about that. We've talked about market research. We talked about it the last day. We'll talk a little bit more about that. We've talked about this already, the understanding how my customer groups are targeted. We're going to talk more about that now as we develop a marketing mix. So the reason I have here, how do you like your salt down the bottom, is, well, I want to show you this. And I think I've probably showed it to you already, but let me just do it again, just in case. Okay, I'm going to go to Tesco because I know this is the way it is in Tesco. And the question was, how do you like your salt? So we're looking at Tesco, which, is a big retailer, grocery retailer here. And when we look at this page, what surprises you on this page? Does anything surprise you? Anything? I don't know. You may not be able to read it. It may not be big enough, but I can scroll through and we can look at this. But I just want to come back to this piece here. Okay. So if I just zoom in, oops. Where is it? Oh, we lost it. We lost it. It's gone there. So let me zoom back out again. There. Showing page 1 to 24 of 143 items. So what is salt? What is salt? Do you remember from your chemistry or your science? Sodium, yeah. I've forgotten what the chemical symbol for salt is. Sodium chloride, is it? Sodium NaCl. Sodium chloride, NaCl. There it is, right? Mineral substance. Okay. So, and yet Tesco are selling 143 different versions of this. Now, I'm not really sure. 26 categories. Okay, it comes up in different areas. Let's look at the baking and see what's in the baking space. So I have sea salt, pepper. Okay, so it's not pure salt. Sea salt roasted corn snack. So it's beyond just salt. If I go tins and packets, oh, there we go. Salt free. So it appears on the label. So it's not 143 different versions of salt, but there are still, if I look at cooking ingredients, okay, and we look at cooking ingredients, there are still 35 versions. Okay. Now, salt is sodium chloride. We've just shown that. Okay. So why is it that there are so many different versions? Why have they so many different products? Well, we've got sacks of salt, 750 grams, okay, which is $3.20 a kilogram. We've got rock salt grinder, so you can get a rock salt, which is $9.90 a kilogram, 3 times the price. We've got Tesco cooking salt, 1.5 kilograms, 83 cents a kilogram. So that's much more cooking salt, which is, a quarter of the price of this one, which means it's a 12th of the price of this rock salt. Don Carlos organic fine sea salt is $3.86 a kilogram, and so on and so on. Coarse salt, finest pink Himalayan, €14.74 a kilogram. Low salt, is that like for diets? I don't know. We've got Malden sea salt, €13 a kilogram, €14 a kilogram, really. 14.5 euro a kilogram for I Love Sea Salt large grinder, 340 grams. Himalayan pink sea salt grinder, this is the most dear so far, €15.36 a kilogram. Tesco garlic salt. I mean, seriously. Oh, well. Giovanni di Firenze Mediterranean sea salt, 90 grams, selling for $3.29, which looks cheap, but working out at €37 a kilogram. €37 a kilogram. This is, I don't know, are there others? Onion salt, Nando's peri peri salt. Oh my God, even dearer again. We're going higher again. Schwartz garlic salt, so it's with salt with garlic, okay? Okay, the bottom line is salt, NaCl, sodium chloride. It comes in different types in terms of it can be finely ground or coarse ground, but when you get a coarse ground, you're going to use a grinder, you're going to grind it down anyway. So you're paying more and you're going to do the work. It's still sodium chloride. There may be slight differences in it. So if it's pink Himalayan, there's probably some extra mineral in it that makes it pink. We might add something to it like garlic or whatever. It might be packaged in a different way. There might be different volumes in the package, but it's still just salt. So the lesson here is that the market is defined. Tesco have defined the market, and the producers have defined the market in lots of different ways. They have found segments within the market. Why would somebody buy a rock salt grinder? Well, who would be that person? Do you think? So if we talk about this one here, Tesco Finest Pink Himalayan Salt Mill. So that's like a grinder. What? Who would buy that? Who would buy the, where was this one? The Giovanni Pink Himalayan Salt Grinder, 90 grams. Girls. Why would girls buy it? Wow. Okay, because it's like a beauty product. Okay. I never thought about that. Okay. Interesting, interesting. I'm not going to ask if you bought it. But you've identified a distinction, a segment of the marketplace, a particular profile of customer. And that's the lesson, is that there are different people want different things. So we don't all don't want the same thing. We don't all need the same thing. And in those differences are opportunities for gaining market share or opportunities for exploitation. So there are opportunities. So let's go back to our slides. How do you like your salt? That was the question, because there are so many different variations. So this is the kind of thing I wanted to get across, is that there are variations, there are segments within markets. We're not all the same. We have different wants, we have different needs, we have different amounts of money available. Okay, so how and why are customer groups targeted? Well, we first of all, we got to look at who. So we segment the market into groups to identify different groups, because we can then focus on individual groups. We identify target markets, we identify customer groups, and then we decide, well, okay, how do we best reach those groups, and how do we package and make available our products and services in such a way that those groups can best use them, or that we best meet their needs. So we might look at things like how people consume the product. So that's an eye-opener for me. So some salt products might be used for beauty. I don't know how, but there we go. That's my limited knowledge. But then we might use them in cooking. We might use them for different flavors. Some people have very fine palates. Some people want to do, they just like the taste of the maybe coarser salt, which is sort of comes from a grinder maybe. So we look at how people buy and use the products and services. We look at their demographics, we look at backgrounds, we look at socioeconomic groups. We decide whether we're looking at business to customer or business to business. So this can help us segment the market as we go along, okay? So for market segmentation, a key consideration is, do we segment or not? Whether to segment a market, whether to segment a segment. So how small do we drive down? Okay. Depending on who we are and what we're about, we might have an undifferentiated approach or a differentiated strategy. Okay. What does that mean? That means, is, do we treat everybody the same, or do we treat people differently? And what we just looked at what Tesco is saying, you know what? We sell to everybody. So we recognize that we're kind of selling to lots of different people. So we're going to stock lots of different versions of the product so that everybody can get a product that they want, okay, and that fits their needs. Whereas somebody like Aldi or Lidl, a different retailer, they focus on a much narrower range. They focus on a much, much narrower range, okay? And they say, we have salt available for you if you want. We don't necessarily have pink Himalayan finely ground mill. We don't have, with an Italian rock, sea salt, whatever. Okay, we have table salt, we have salt and grinders, and we have pink Himalayan. That's it. Okay, because what they're saying, they're realizing is that there is a market maybe for all these other things, but 80-90% of the market is right in those three segments. Okay, whereas Tesco is saying 100% of the market. So that's a decision that different businesses make. So how do we approach this? Now, Tesco has an undifferentiated approach in that Tesco is the same for everybody because it's providing everything. Whereas specialty grocery stores or craft food stores are focused on a very specific type of customer, and they've got a differentiated approach. Just like the salt manufacturers, well, salt providers have different approaches. They're saying, okay, so Saxa is saying, we just do salt, basic salt, simple, same all the time, maybe a low sodium version, but there's only one or two versions of Saxa salt. Whereas other producers are saying, we're producing this pink, fine, or coarse, ground, whatever, okay? So there are different approaches, okay? And we need to think about that. So I'm going to skip the Airbnb. I'm going to look at this, the Volkswagen Group. So these car manufacturers and truck manufacturers are all part of the Volkswagen Group. So it's the same thing really as salt. The top line, the top four there, Volkswagen, Audi, Seat, and Skoda are all mass market cars. Bentley and Bugatti and Lamborghini and Porsche are exclusive market cars. Ducati is a motorcycle range, and then Volkswagen commercial vehicles is like Volkswagen vans, but then Scania and MAN are big, heavy truck brands. Okay, so the Volkswagen Group has 12 different brands on that slide. Okay, 12 different brands. And within that, it will have different products. Why does it have different brands and why does it have different products? Any idea? Does the person who buys a Bentley, do they also look at Seat? So are they considering a Seat or a Bentley? Or a Volkswagen or a Bentley? Or somebody's looking at a Volkswagen Golf, are they also considering a Porsche 911? They're probably not. Okay. So if we look at this profile here, the Volkswagen Group, and this is just some of the cars, like the Seat, the Volkswagen, the Audi, and the Skoda. What we see is that they have some competition between brands, but they're spread across segments in the marketplace. So here's the type of car in one sense. Well, it's I suppose it's one axis. So a mini car, a small car, a compact, an upper middle class car, an upper class or a luxury vehicle. Okay, and they've got different functionalities across the top. So hatchback, I don't really know what a notchback is. I'm not really sure what that is. A station wagon, a multi-person vehicle, MPV, a sports coupe, a limousine coupe, a roadster, a cabriolet is a convertible, okay, a pickup, and an off-road vehicle, okay, and those sort of things are sort of mapped against I suppose, the value in the marketplace. So the mini cars tend to be hatchbacks. They don't sell, cabriolets, convertibles in the mini car market. It doesn't make sense. First of all, the product's not great, and secondly, people who are buying mini cars are those are the lowest price cars. Okay, we have some in the compact cars, which is sort of the small family cars. We've got big competition here in the hatchback, and if you look across, if you think about your Volkswagen Golf or your Volkswagen Passat or your Audi A4, We've got the basic car, we've got the hatchback version, we may have a station wagon version, there may be a sports version, there might even be a roadster, which is a two-door, and there might be a convertible, which is there's an A4 convertible as well. Actually, it's an A40, this might be the A3. So the point is that Audi has different products in different categories. It's not the car market. Audi has identified 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 by 7. So 70 potential segments, of which, they're talking about 3 and 6 is 9, 13, 16, 18, 19, 20, 22, 24, 26. They're saying that they're in 26 of those 70 potential segments. They have a product, or products. So in these segments down here, which is mass market stuff, they've got 2 or 3 products in most of those segments. Okay. In the higher end, well, they've only got 1 product in a lot of these. There's 3 products there: Bentley, a Rolls, and a I don't know what that is. Bentley, Rolls, and is it Bugatti? Is that what it is? I don't know what the other one there is. Might be might be, I don't know. So the point is that they've got these different segments and different products in it. Okay. The reason I suppose this is possible is because Volkswagen is a huge business. If you were starting off, you might start off in one of those segments. So Tesla, when it got going, Tesla started in, let's make this flame red. Tesla started in one segment. Tesla started in the Roadster segment, somewhere around here, really. Okay, maybe somewhere like that there. Okay, and then Tesla sort of came down a bit, maybe slightly down and into the middle to compact sort of space. Well, more in the middle to upper and in the somewhere around here. Okay, and then after that, Tesla's next product was probably down here, more mainstream. Okay, so that's sort of been Tesla's approach. Okay, let's make it stand out more. Yep. I'll put a big T in this one just to make sure we know what it is. Okay. If we look at segments in a slightly different way, so this is the cost of ownership, low cost to high cost, and the product excellence, bad to good. Well, the really, really good stuff is the luxury segment, okay? And what we find is we don't find low cost of entry vehicles really in that segment. Down here, we seem to have the higher end stuff, the Mercedes-Benz, the BMW, the Lexus, Cadillac. Whereas over here in the lower cost of entry, cost of ownership segment, we've got brands like Hyundai and Kia. Now, this is an old chart. They used to be there because they didn't have great reputations for quality. Whereas, you see other brands here, so much lower cost of ownership Toyota because they're very reliable, and they're sort of moving towards the premium segment. So actually, from a mass market point of view, up here is where you want to be. Okay, from an exclusive point of view, down here is okay because people are willing to spend the money, but they're looking for the really good stuff. So that's an interesting way of looking at the market as well. The point is, we've got to understand which segment we're looking at, which part of the market we want to try and get into. Okay, so we could run an exercise like this and talk about, where we are if we were looking at market research. First of all, who might be the customers for some of this stuff here? So who might be the customer for the coffee cart? Okay, or who might be the customer for a fashion store? How would we distinguish those? we might say for a coffee cart, it's somebody who's well, it might be a commuter on the way to work, right? Could be an office worker, okay? It could be a city dweller. So they're unlikely to live in the countryside in a rural area because there's no real, it doesn't make sense to have a coffee cart out in a rural area. There aren't enough customers. You put a coffee cart where it's high rent, where there's lots of people, and where there's a demand. And part of the demand is convenience, okay? If we talk about takeaway or delivery food, who might be the customer here? What words might we use to describe? If you think about it, they have to be local, don't they? Because they have to be local because so what was I saying? Local. But they tend to be local because you're not going to go long distance for food, right? You're not going to take away food and go long distance because it gets cold. So you're going to have to be somewhat local, which would kind of imply city or town, or certainly village, but not out in the countryside. Okay. And convenience, so time poor. Now, not always, just time poor or maybe lazy. Okay. Yeah. So when we look at any business, any opportunity, what we're trying to do is understand the marketplace and who's in it. Okay. So here's a couple I looked at before. So in terms of the coffee cart, so what are we actually selling here? So we'll start with what we're selling. What we're selling is a coffee, which is a hit of coffee, right? Or maybe tea. Maybe convenience is part of the thing, particularly around city dwellers. Yeah, maybe disposable package, that might be part of it. There might be some pastries or donuts or snacks and quick service. So the coffee cart is all about convenience and snack and, getting your coffee hit, really. So what we might say then are some of the attributes about somebody who might buy coffee from a coffee cart, where they're getting coffee on the way or on the run or on their commute, if you like. So convenience is a key part of it. Speed is important to them. And maybe because they go to a particular coffee cart because it's artisan or because it's they like the way it's produced over here. There is an opportunity for differentiation as well. So we can look at markets in different ways, okay? So the key to this is, first off, identify the market, okay? The total addressable market, we talk first of all. So the total addressable market is, these are the people we could provide our products and services to. So Coca-Cola's total addressable market is this big. The local restaurant's total addressable market is this big. So what's the total addressable market for our existing products or for the new products or services we're looking to introduce? So what is it? And then how do we identify or select our, in some way devise up the marketplace? So we're looking for ways to apply some sort of base to distinguish between the marketplace, between the elements in the marketplace. So we're all familiar with Netflix, right? How does Netflix break up the market? Or what are some of the ways that Netflix does that? Because Netflix offers a whole range of products, really, doesn't it? Okay. First of all, it does do some breakdown of the market based on geographical region because of on nation states, basically, country borders, because different countries have different rules and they can break and the content requirements and the content protection, I suppose, the licensing is normally country specific. Okay. So that's a natural break there. But there are other ways they break up the market by language. by culture to a certain extent. So it doesn't mean that you can't look across, but I know on my Netflix, one of my filters, if you like, or one of my categories is foreign language, of which Spanish is a lot of it, okay? Or they break it up in terms of the type of entertainment people want, whether it's comedies or horror or sci-fi or drama, or crime or adventure, don't they? So, and what they do then is they say, well, we have products available in each of these segments. Which segment are you interested in? Let's show you the products that are available in that segment. Okay, so there's that sort of breakdown and addressing of the needs. Now, Netflix is at the scale where it can do that. But if we were starting up to build a Netflix, well, we might decide, okay, the biggest potential market is, well, maybe we talk, there's no point in talking to people in the age between the ages of 16 and 24 because they're all stuck to TikTok. Maybe the biggest market is stay-at-home moms or, moms, parents of young kids who are kind of, stuck to home a lot. All right. So we might segment the market in different ways. And as we do that, as we sort of figure out the different basis for segmentation, we should start to develop profiles of those target segments. In other words, this is segment A. These are the people in segment A. This is segment B. This are the people in segment B. And this is what they want. So really what we're trying to do is to try and figure out who we're trying to market to. So this is an old picture, right? But it's a picture of a newborn, okay? So let's look at this from the other angle. What businesses will be interested in this scene and the people in this scene, and who would they be targeting and why? Well, you're not necessarily going to target the baby, right? But the new parents are obviously going to be a key feature, aren't they? They're going to have needs. They have wants. They have particular issues that they need dealt with. The people around the baby, so the family, so particularly, not so much the kids, but particularly aunts and uncles and friends and so on, they're a different market, aren't they? They're not necessarily going to be dealing with, raising the kid directly, but they're going to celebrate in the moment, which there might be a gift market. All right. So we can look at marketing in lots of different ways. So we can segment, we can go from zero or undifferentiated segmentation to hyper-segmentation. If we don't identify any segments within the marketplace, we're talking about an undifferentiated strategy. It's mass marketing. We're trying to sell everything to everybody. And really that's Tesco to a certain extent, okay? If we have some sort of focus strategy, right, we might identify a segment within the marketplace. We might have a very niche marketing effort. We're not saying that the market is one segment. We're identifying one segment within the market. So for example, if we go back to the salt grinders, okay, the salt mills are very much aimed at people for whom the very act of grinding out the salt possibly makes them feel ownership of the dish. They feel that they're a little bit in control to a certain extent. And maybe if we were to profile those people, we might say, well, they're more foodies, more gourmets. They like the idea of food and the different tastes, and they want to try different things. They're not just taking salt because it's a basic requirement. They're saying, I would like a little bit of this to nourish the flavor, right? If we have two or more segments, we might identify different niches in the marketplace. We might have a differentiated strategy. So instead of just focusing on one group, we might have one strategy for this segment and one strategy for this segment and one strategy for this group over here, okay? So we might have multiple niches, which means we have to have different focuses. It doesn't mean that it's a completely different message, although it could well be. But there could be an element that's the same, but that we have components that are different. So if we go back to our Coca-Cola, well, we know that Coca-Cola adverts come in different ads. And in reality, because we all look different as well as having the holistic, we're all happy families and happiness is and moment of refreshment ads, there are cultural specific ads and ethnic ads coming across too. Because, Coca-Cola wants to show the people who they're targeting in the ads. That makes sense. All right. The last approach here is thousands of segments, which is what we call hypersegmentation, which is where we're almost at one-to-one marketing. Now, that sounds like really difficult, but actually, that's where we're going in many ways, the power of one. The more we can segment and differentiate, then the more we can speak directly to each of those segments or some of those segments, the more our engagement is going to feel very, very directed, or should feel very directed, almost like one-to-one. And that helps build a relationship. So that's kind of behind the idea behind some of this. So these might be our approaches to segmentation. And the process we might follow is the STP: segmentation, targeting, and positioning. Segmentation is identifying the market, identifying the segments and bases in the marketplace. How do we, create some segments, and then development of profiles for those segments. Targeting then is evaluation of the segments and picking out, well, which ones are we going to go for? We're going to go for this one, we're going to go for that one, but we're not going to go for this one in the middle. Okay. And then to position ourselves to identify the optimal position for those targeted segments. We are not trying to target the untargeted. Well, obviously we're not trying to target. We're not trying to address the untargeted segments. That makes no sense. It's the ones that we want to be working in. They're the ones that we need to target. Now, probably the best way to illustrate this is to run through a sort of a business case. So I'm going to show you this video here. This is a business case. It's a presentation for a business case, but actually it's really, really good. And this is it here. We're not going to watch all of it, but I'm going to watch some of it.
If you want to take full control of your sales,
you need to try Monday CRM. It's given
mind.
Okay.
We're Outlet Baby Monitors, and we want to share the story of how this sock is bringing parents peace of mind. So our story starts with Tanner working in the hospital. He works with the technology pulse oximetry. You've all seen this. It's a little red light they put on your finger, monitors your vital signs. He found working with this day in, day out that there was a pain with it that he had experienced, and that pain was the cord. He found that patients didn't like it. He found that nurses didn't like it. It got tangled up. It got in the way. So he assumed that other nurses would feel the same way. So he went ahead to test that assumption. He thought, what if we had a wireless pulse oximeter? We could have nurses use it, and we could sell it through the hospitals. So in validating that, he went out and talked with 58 nurses. He found a really good response rate. 93% said they wanted to see this over the existing technology. However, going back to the hospital, talking with administrators, he got a very different story. This was not a pain for them. It was about money, and it wasn't cost-effective for them, and so they said no. So we learned a very valuable lesson. Your user is not always your customer. Even though we found a user that loved the idea and wanted to use it, they did not have purchasing power, and so going from the yellow, it goes back to red. It's unvalidated. So they're not our customer. We had to move on somewhere else.
A little closer, sorry.
Okay. This didn't cost a thing, and it only took about a week to validate. So we knew that we needed to pivot. Kurt Workman had experienced firsthand in his family the pain that comes from a child being lost to respiratory failure. And so he thought, what if we pivot, use the same technology in an in-home setting for infants? We can monitor vital signs, blood oxygen levels, heart rate, and report that to a parent, where if there's an emergency during the night, it will alert and alarm the parent, giving them peace of mind knowing that they'll have that type of alert. He had found, in addition, that SIDS is the #1 cause of infant death in the United States. It's often respiratory related, which increases parents' anxiety a lot. In addition, there's 4 million babies born in the U.S. every year. And so with that size, we figured and assumed that's a really big pain. I bet a lot of other parents feel this pain. So we went out to test that assumption. We started with our assumed solution, which was putting the technology into a smart anklet, putting it on the baby. It wirelessly would send that information to a relay station, which was capable of alerting and alarming the parents if there was an emergency, as well as pushing the information onto a smartphone for convenience. So we completely pivoted from our original idea. We started focusing on creating value in a new customer segment for parents in the home setting, helping bring them peace of mind. So we knew there was 2 types of risk we'd be facing in this. Market risk, will someone buy it? and technology risk. Can we build it? We tackled market risk first because it was easier to get to and it was more important. We initially surveyed 105 mothers, and we found that on average they gave us an 8.5 out of 10 on wanting this product, thinking the technology was great. 96% said that they would use this technology. We got a lot of responses like, this is awesome, I want to buy one now, and take my money now and start selling it. We knew this was very early validation, but it at least pointed us in the right direction. We really validated this idea when we took the idea into a class project, for which we built a website, we made a video. The video in reality at the time was nothing more than just smoke and mirrors showing what the product could be or what it could do. We put it up on the website, and it leaked out. We didn't intend for this, but it got picked up by 40 news agencies in 13 different countries. A lot of big names picked up this story. And because of that, we received over 500 emails in our inbox. Most of these were from parents begging for the product, saying, we want the peace of mind you provide. We're not sleeping well at night. We're willing to buy a prototype if that's all you have. And so from that, we feel we really validated that, yes, there is a pain here. These parents want the peace of mind that this can provide. In addition, we had 15 distributors around the world reach out to us. Among these, one from our major competitor said they're willing to drop that account, which brings them $2 million in revenue per year, to pick up our account. The second, that's moving forward the fastest, wants to do $50,000 in pre-sales to get this into their market the quickest. The great thing is all of that validation, it came from virtually building nothing at that point. And so we feel that indeed, yes, we did validate that there is a pain here and there is a customer that we can service. That only cost us $220 and took about 2 weeks to determine.
So our next question was, how are we going to reach our customers? We initially thought through hospitals, but after talking with pediatricians and mothers, we realized that the best place to sell it would be in the retail location. When looking at how much it was going to cost us to make our product, we realized that at the end, the customers would have to be buying it at around $200. Our question was, are we really creating that much value? So we originally thought and assumed that we would have to rent the product. Our initial survey was pointing us in that exact same direction. We got out of the building, went and talked to the people over at Babies R Us, and they told us there's a huge span of different products as far as price goes, and that the ones that were being purchased the most were in the $200 range. We didn't believe the lady when she told us this, so we called 33 other baby stores, and they told us actually the exact same thing. We were completely wrong. 71% of the baby monitors being purchased today are in the $200 to $200 or $250 price point. And we learned that surveys can also lie if you don't word it correctly. We were asking, what would you expect to pay? But when we started asking what's the maximum you would pay, that completely changed the results that we were getting. We also A/B tested this on our website. People thought that they were purchasing the product when they clicked on the reserve button at different price points. This allowed us to find out what the elasticity of the demand was and find our demand curve and find that the profit maximizing price was at $299. So we, in fact, were proved wrong, and luckily we will be able to sell the product. This cost us $30 and 3 weeks. The next question was, could we build it? And that went right with our next technology risk. The two factors that we needed to prove out was pulse oximetry and wireless transmission in this usage. We first did wireless transmission because it was easier. We built the proof of concept. It cost us $300 and 7 weeks, and it was able to do everything that we wanted it to, even though it looked kind of ugly. After proving that, the next question was, can we create pulse oximetry specific for infants? So we went back to the hospital. We interviewed the nurses. We watched how they were using the product, or the current pulse oximeters, and we realized that our design wasn't going to work. For technical reasons, we had to switch to a more sock-like design. We tested that sock-like design with over 120 hours of testing. We did it in 26 different homes and 7 overnight tests with parents. We are happy to see that with our new design, we could in fact build it. It cost us $500 and 12 weeks on working on that. Our next question, which unfortunately we didn't learn this until later in the game, was that we needed FDA clearance on this product. And the first person we talked to said it was going to cost us over $1 million. We had to figure this out. We talked to 16 professionals. We even talked to the labs that we need to work through, and we know it's going to cost us at maximum $200,000 in 13 months. We validated that, and it only cost us $200 in 3 weeks. But at this point, this validation was really bittersweet. We said, man, is $200,000 in 13 months and all that liability really running lean before we can even get a product into a customer's hands? Could we not create something that will be more minimal and less risky and start with that in the market? What was holding us up was the alarm. Alarm plus pulse oximetry means that you need an FDA clearance. We thought, well, what if we scratch the alarm? What could we do? We said, well, we'd have the same product that would still give you all these really cool things, and we could play with that data really in a lot of interesting ways. And maybe we could call it our infant health tracker. This was completely unvalidated, so we had to go back and revalidate whether or not this product with that slight tweak would be different. So we grabbed our clipboards and we headed out to a bunch of retail locations, and we interviewed 81 people in person. We gave them 4 pieces of paper and said, which one would you buy if you had to? And they had to choose between our product and then the 3 other types of product that they can buy in those same price points. We were amazed when 20% of them said that they would choose our product. And we also learned so much about our customer. It's not a one-size-fits-all customer. In fact, we really kind of have a whole range of customers. On one side, we kind of have like our hippie-type mom that's a lot less worried about these types of things. And then you also have the moms that's on the opposite side of the spectrum. The ones that were less worried told us things like, and we kept hearing it over and over, I wouldn't want an alarm on this. This would drive me crazy. And it absolutely floored us, but we realized that our alarm version wouldn't even capture part of the market. And by starting with a health tracker that they liked already, we'd be addressing a completely separate market, not cannibalizing our own sales, and starting with something that was a lot less risky to begin with. As for the parents who weren't worried, we would launch our next product a few months down the road after we'd learned from some risk and avoided some risk with our first product. So that was validated, and we learned so much more about how our customer base is segmented out. This cost us nothing, and it took about 3 weeks to do. Moving forward, we still need to validate a few things. We need to validate whether or not there's a few other subscription-like revenue streams, and we also need to find key partners that are in operations and have retail experience. We got all this done for just over $1,000 and 24 weeks. And we did a lot of validation and talked to a lot of people, not just surveys, but over hundreds of people we one-on-one interviewed and tried to make fake sales with. We're really excited to be launching this summer with the non-alarm health tracking version that doesn't need FDA.
Okay, I'm going to stop it there. Okay, right? Okay, what do you think? What do you think? It's more than just market segmentation as a video, but that business is now worth somewhere around $300 to $500 million. Okay, so these guys won a business case presentation competition with this pitch, but it became a real business. I mean, this is not, they weren't making this up. This became a real business, and they managed to get a series of elements of funding in place. So there is a lot, absolutely. Absolutely, there's a lot in it. Now, this is quite a complex product because it's a baby, effectively a baby monitor, okay? But the same idea applies. Now, just a slide before this one here, remember, he said it took about 26 weeks, 6 months. They were developing the product at the same time. So 3 to 6 months is certainly not a bad period, but it is quite, it took them a long time after this as well to get going, but at least they were moving forward. But you're right, there's a lot in it, okay? A couple of key things, if you think about it. Their first thing was they were completely wrong who was going to buy this product, weren't they? Even what the product was. Right? Their first pivot was, while it was something that would help the nurses, you know, this sort of wireless pulse oximetry, and they were thinking hospitals all over the world, big market. No, that simply wasn't going to happen. Sure it wasn't. Okay, and they realized very quickly that this was not a market for them. Okay, so pivoting to another market, this idea of new babies and, you know, newborns parents or new parents in particular who have a baby and are responsible for a baby for the first time, you know, and who are in all cultures, you know, we sort of are very protective of babies, and particularly new moms and dads are very nervous, like it's new to them, okay? So they realized there's a potential market here, and it wasn't exploitative. They realized there were some products out there, but they had this idea that, you know what, this could actually work. We could do this as an alternative to some of the other products and some of these other baby monitors. So I remember when our youngest one, we had one of these things because, you know, we were these parents. We had one of these things. We had this sort of baby monitor thing in the cot. And what it was a protection against that exact thing of sudden infant death. We had this thing in the cot with the baby, and there was a thing under the mattress so that the baby stopped breathing, it was going to set off an alarm. It was not foolproof, as we discovered when the alarm went off, and of course, chased up the stairs, wondered what was going on, emergency and everything else, to realize the baby had just rolled over to the side. So existing products weren't particularly effective. So I guess there's a need, right? So clarity about the need, clarity about who the customer was and who the segment was. In particular, at the end here, they realized that their first market wasn't even the ones who were more worried, who were looking for an alarm, but it was the ones who were interested in the health aspect, the monitoring aspect. So just back here, right, when he looked at this piece here and he talked about these customers, the less worried customers, they were the ones who actually they could start with. So only get that from investigation and consideration and so on. So that's why it's a useful video to look at. So let me just go back here because I just want to, we're kind of up against time and I want to finish off something which sets up tomorrow's class. Okay. So this idea of segmentation, right? We may look at some of the segmentation basis. We could do it by any one of these categories or these groups of categories: geographic or demographic or psychographic or behavioral. Demographics, of course, is easy. In one sense, it's age or gender or race or income bracket or language spoken potentially. Geographics could be, in the city or in the rural areas or in this country or in this economic zone. Behavioral could be, once we're using social media. We can apply one or more of these bases as a way to filter down and segment our marketplace to people that we could actually target. There are marketing terms such as yuppies. Have you heard of yuppies? Young, upwardly mobile professionals. So this was a thing. This was the first, I suppose, of what I'm calling demographic soup. This was one of the first categorizations done back in the 1980s. And it was almost like a joke thing, really. But marketing people, advertising people realized that young, upwardly mobile professionals, the ones in New York or London or Paris or Tokyo, who were young, suddenly were getting good paying jobs, had disposable income, that they were a really interesting marketplace because they would buy pretty much anything that was fashionable or different or new, they would buy. So this was a particular categorization of any market, really. And because they were young, upwardly mobile, by definition, they didn't have kids. They didn't have pets usually. They weren't tied down. They could spend money on themselves. And that led to sort of other distinctions like dinks, dual income, no kids. So like yuppies personified, or yuppie squared, if you like. Dual income, no kids, early retirement, a dinker. In other words, so this is somebody who's no kids, two incomes in the household, and yet they're going to be, they're going to be retiring very soon. So they're going to have loads of disposable income. Sinbad, single income, no boyfriend and desperate. Oh my God. So there we go. Glams, graying, leisured, affluent, and married. So older married people who loads of money and probably bored. Okay. Kippers, kids in parents' pockets eroding retirement savings. So we have a lot of kippers in Ireland at the moment because we have accommodation issues. So a lot of kids are still living at home, even into their 20s and early 30s, because we don't have, our accommodation market is screwed up. We don't have enough housing for people to move out and get to their own places as much. So I'm calling this demographic soup. It's a bit jokey in one sense, but there's an element of truth here. It's about saying, okay, where's our market? What's the segment? How do we target them? What are the characteristics that define this group that holds them together that we can now figure out a marketing mix for? And that's what we're going to pick up on tomorrow. And we'll use that as a way to sort of pull all the strands together and finish the module. All right, folks, thank you very much.